AIDS, and she's in the final year of the 10-year-long, 3-month-a-year uh, program, which is our Western form of our Shedra, uh, which is an intensive teacher training program under the auspices of Dzongtsa Khyentse Rinpoche, called the Melinda program. So she's going to be a Dharma teacher for a long time and has been also doing the practice and study coordination in Rigpa centers in Europe. So I'm very pleased that Lilly Ng is with us today to introduce to us the second great foundation of the Mahayana. Oh, was all of that muted?
No, no, Tashi, we heard most of that.
Okay, great.
Arrow, you should make Lily co-host so she can unmute herself.
Thank you, Aura, and thank you, Tashi, and thank you, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you all today. So let's start, as we always do, with 5 minutes of sitting. So, Aura, if you could ring the gong for us, please. Thank you. you. So for today's session, we're going to be exploring the Yogacara and how they explain confusion and why awakening is possible. So as I'm sure most of you saw last week, Alex beautifully presented the Majamaka. And he covered that self and phenomena do not exist inherently, and that appearances are not the problem. And the problem is reification, this landing, taking things as solid and truly existent. So the message, or the slogan maybe from Alex's teaching last week, was don't fabricate the unfabricated. And today we're going to kind of level up. We're going to bring in the Yogacara perspective and their contribution, which is not just to say don't grasp, but it helps to explain why emptiness is not just a negation, and how confusion is actually constructed, why duality feels so convincing, and how meditation can actually begin to undo this construction, the overlay. And that also brings us to why awakening is possible as well. So I will do this by just lightly touching in on some of the incredible richness from these teachings and not elaborating so much on the philosophical systems and the debates amongst the different schools. And my focus today will really be on how the Yogacara system helps us as practitioners to progress along the path. So, Elroy, if you could put up the slide now, please. So I'm going to start the session off, as Andy does in chapter 18, with the quote from Khenpo Sutrim Jamso, which I'm not going to read to you straight away, but I just want to kind of contextualize it first. So I'm beginning here because, in a way, this quote really contains the whole rationale for today's session, what we'll cover. So in this quote, what Khenpo Sutrim Jamso is actually doing is he's not rejecting Majamaka, but he's pointing to a possible imbalance or a habit that we may develop. So the Majamaka helps us to cut through illusion, and we learn to negate inherent existence. But with that comes a danger that emptiness can become associated with absence or negation. So that's when the experience of absolute reality, our nature of mind, begins to show itself. But there's the problem that we may also subtly negate that too. So here, this is where the Yogacaras step in to say, complete freedom from conceptual elaboration is not a blank nothingness. If elaboration really ceases, the clear light nature of mind shines forth so clearly and unmistakably that it would be impossible to deny it. So I'm going to now read this quote, which hopefully will be a little bit more understandable now with the context of what has been laid out. So quote says, the experience of complete freedom from conceptual elaboration must also be the experience of the clear light nature of mind. A follower of the middle way who denies this must still have some subtle concept which is obscuring or negating this reality. In other words, he has not truly realized complete freedom from conceptual contrivance. This happens because for a long time, the meditator has been cutting through illusion and seeing emptiness as a kind of negation. This becomes such a strong habit that even when the experience of absolute reality, the clear light nature of mind, starts to break through like the sun from behind the clouds, the meditator automatically turns his mind toward it to subtly negate it. Yogacharans argue that if there really were no conceptual elaboration in the mind, the clear light nature would shine forth so clearly and unmistakably that it would not be possible to deny it. Thanks, Elroy. We can stop the sharing now. So, with that, the question really for today is complete freedom from conceptual elaboration or contrivance is not merely negation, but is the clear light nature of mind. Why is that not our ordinary experience? Why don't we experience that all the time? And how does Yogacara help us understand what obscures this? So I also here wanted just to add, as Tashi had mentioned, I'm a participant of the Melinda program, which was initiated by Songsa Khyentse Rinpoche. And a few years ago, he met with us, the Melinda participants. And during the meeting, he warned us, he said to us, don't be overly in love with reasoning and empiricism. You have to be careful with that because you will lose your magic. Magic is important. So that's almost a koan. You could think about what that means. But here, I'm going to use it in the context of Yogacara gives us subtle reasoning. And that reasoning really matters. It helps us disentangle the confusion. And reasoning is the boat that we need to get us to the other side. But we also have to let go of that boat, right? So if we get too attached to analysis or explanations, to logic, empiricism, or thinking, I must be able to work all of this out conceptually, then we risk losing the magic. And what is magic? Magic, you could say, is what is felt resonance of the Dharma, and something touches us. The sense that awakening is living and experiential. And the recognition that something in us already responds to truth, beauty, compassion, and openness. So in this session, we'll try to keep both the clarity and the magic. So maybe from here we can just explore how Andy began actually with looking at mere cognizance. And Andy began with mere cognizance to invite us to investigate something very simple. So usually we would assume that there is a world out there, everything out there, and that I'm perceiving it, and that my perception is just simply revealing things as they are. But the Yogacara asks us to look at this a little bit more carefully. And I'd like to ask you now, just choose something, or if you're sitting beside someone, maybe just to focus your attention on whatever you've chosen to look at, or the person, just for a few moments. And just be with that thing or them. And what do you actually know? What do you know from just being there, focused? We know colors, shapes, maybe sounds, other sensations. Maybe thoughts will arise, memories and associations. But do we ever experience the thing, the object or the person, apart from the experience that we're having of it? So Yogacharans would say we never step outside of the experience to compare what appears with the thing as it is in itself. It's almost like we instantly conclude that it's simply the world out there. So there's a movement from what appears, the appearance, to a solid object out there. That happens so quickly that we don't even notice it. And you remember last week, Alex said, actually, appearances are not the problem, it's what we do with them. So the Yogacharans are asking, how does that happen? And how does simple appearance become the convincing world of subject and object that we take to be reality? So if mere cognizance loosens our certainty that we are simply perceiving a solid world out there, then the next question would be, how does that world get constructed so convincingly? How does simple appearance become a solid object out there, things out there, a subject in here, me, and then the whole world of liking, disliking, fear, hope, and habits? And the Yogacaра's response to this is the framework of the 8 consciousnesses. And these 8 consciousnesses are presented sort of like as a map of how confusion gets built, how appearance becomes object, how knowing becomes me, and how the process gets repeated until it starts to feel like a reality. So just to go over these 8 consciousnesses. So first of all, we have the 5 sense consciousnesses. So these are seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, and touching. And these are just the raw contact, the immediate sensory experience. So there's nothing happening here other than the actual sensory experience. There's no labeling of thinking that this is good or this is bad or that this means something about me. We're here just at the experience of the level of the senses. There's no story yet. Then when it comes to the 6th consciousness coming in, this is where the overlay really begins to happen. This is where the labeling, the naming, the comparison, the judging, the remembering, the narration, interpreting, and meaning making begins. So what was just an appearance? So just a few moments ago, remember I asked you to choose a thing or a person to focus on. So that thing, whatever it was, with the 6th consciousness now becomes a glass of water, a cup, my cup, something I like this cup, or this is a problem. And this is where Alex's language from last week of landing is so useful. The mind doesn't just experience, it lands on experience and turns it into a concept, judgment, or a story. And this is what we start to see in meditation: the commentary, the replay, the anticipation, the evaluation. This starts to become more apparent in meditation. Then when it comes to the 7th consciousness, this is where the story becomes personal, so that it's no longer just a glass. It's not just there's a thought or there's a sound, but it becomes, this is my glass, this is happening to me, I'm upset, or I'm doing something badly, or this is my problem, my experience. So if the 6th consciousness turns the appearances into the world, the 7th turns the world into my world and organizes around a self which is at the center of it all. And then we have the 8th consciousness, and this explains why patterns don't just happen once and then disappear. So the 8th consciousness is where all these habits, all these patterns, they're stored and repeated, reinforced and habituated. So one moment of perception becomes a pattern of reaction or a familiar emotional imprint, a way of seeing the world, a way of seeing others. I'm sure you can all kind of relate to this. So this is why samsara begins to feel so convincing, not because it is true, but because we've been continuously rehearsing these patterns. And you could think of the 8th consciousness as a bit like compound interest. Compound interest because if you think of a moment of irritation, fear, self-doubt, or craving, any of these experiences, they don't just vanish. These experiences, they get deposited back into the storehouse, and they gather momentum each time it happens, so that a fleeting reaction, if repeated again and again, becomes a well-worn pattern. So the Yogacaра's point is not just that we mistake reality once, it's that appearances arise, and then the sixth consciousness interprets it. And then the seventh kicks in and appropriates it as me, as mine, and the eighth stores and reinforces the pattern. And that is how a simple appearance becomes the convincing world of subject and object that we take to be reality. And here, Trungpa Rinpoche helps us to see that this whole process, to see what this whole process amounts to. So what the eight consciousnesses are describing is not just a lot of thoughts and emotions. They are describing how experience hardens into a dualistic world. So it's not that they are, it's just that it seems to harden into that, right? And he talked about this appearing aspect of experience is taken as object. So everything that appears as object, as something out there being known. And there's this knowing aspect that then sort of takes on this experience of being a subject, of someone in here who is knowing that object outside. So what begins as a simple appearance becomes an object out there and a subject in here. And then a whole world is organized around that split of object and subject. And this is why the eight consciousnesses matter so much. They are not just a theory of mind, but they are showing us how duality is built, how appearance becomes object, and how knowing becomes self, and how subject and object begin to feel solid and real. So the point of Yogacara is not only to say that things are empty, it is to show how emptiness is missed, how the dualistic world of self and phenomena get constructed and then are taken to be reality. And this is also why Yogacara matters for meditation, because it's not only saying don't grasp, it's showing us how grasping gets built, how appearance becomes object, how experience becomes my experience, how habit keeps reinforcing the same patterns. And this is why Yogacara spends so much time on the dependent nature, not so that we become fascinated by the machinery of confusion, but so that the illusion begins to lose its power. So it's a little bit like understanding a magic trick. While you don't know how the effect is produced, it completely grips you. But once you see the mechanism, the way it has been put together, you can still see the appearance, but you are no longer deceived in quite the same way. So Yogacara is doing something similar. It is showing us how the trick of samsaric perception is constructed, so that we stop automatically believing in the finished illusion. So in that sense, Yogacara is like the compassionate parent who doesn't just say, don't do that, but they're actually helping us to understand why. So that understanding can arise from within rather than from fear or mere compliance. So meditation begins to expose the commentary of the sixth consciousness, all that labeling, and also the self-reference of the seventh, and the repetitive imprints of the eighth. So the point of practice is not to destroy appearances. It is to recognize the construction of the confusion, the overlay, to see what is being added, and to stop automatically taking that finished construction to be reality. And if we stand back from everything we've just explored, the building of the overlay through the 8 consciousnesses, and its hardening into a dualistic split between subject and object, Yogacara gives us names for this whole process through the 3 natures. And 3 natures are the imagined nature, the dependent nature, and the perfected nature. So I'll just go through those quickly and give you an example. So the imagined nature is the name of the overlay itself. That's thinking there's an I, mine, that this is really happening the way it is from its own side. It's the story that I've built, which is reality, the subject and object taken as solid and independently existing. And just to remember here, appearances are not being denied. What's the problem? What's the mistake? What's mistaken is seeing this overlay, the way things are imagined and solidified, personalized, and taken as truly existing. That's the problem. And then with the dependent nature, this is the name for the process that builds and sustains this overlay. So this is the 8 consciousnesses that we've just gone through, the mere cognizance, sensory contact, all the labeling, the conceptual elaboration, appropriating things, these skandhas as self, all the karmic continuity, habit, and repetition. This is the imagined nature. That's the overlay. And dependent nature is the building of the overlay, or explaining how the overlay happens. And the perfected nature, this isn't another world or something newly created. It's what's revealed when the imagined overlay is seen through. And the classic example that's given is mistaking a rope for a snake. I'm sure many of you are familiar with this. So the imagined nature here is seeing a snake when there is only a rope. So it becomes the story that we believe. We think there's a snake and we become scared. The dependent nature is all of the causes and conditions that make that misperception arise. The dim light, shape, our perception, memory, fear, and all that conceptual elaboration. And the perfected nature is seeing that the snake was never there the way we imagined it. And what is revealed is the absence of the imagined snake in what appears. So the perfected nature is what is revealed when the overlay is no longer believed. And this is when, as Khenpo Sutram Gyaltso said in this quote that I read out at the beginning, no conceptual elaboration, when there is no conceptual elaboration in the mind, then the clear light nature would shine forth so clearly and unmistakably that it would not be possible to deny it. So if the 8 consciousnesses explain how the overlay gets built, and the 3 natures show us the structure of that process, then another question arises: how does practice actually work with this? How do we stop merely understand the architecture of how confusion arises and begin to actually loosen that confusion? Practice is learning to distinguish our direct experience from the overlay. In meditation, we begin to notice what is simply seen, heard, felt, all those things in those 5 consciousnesses. And then when the 6th consciousness starts narrating, judging, elaborating, we become aware of that. And also when the 7th inserts a me. And then also how, with the 8th, how the patterns and emotional habits continually repeat. So practice is not trying to destroy those appearances. It's learning to recognize what is added, what is fabricated. It discerns that fabrication, what's fabricated and what isn't. And shamatha helps, in particular, to slow down the momentum of elaboration, of that conceptual labeling, and makes the activity of the sixth consciousness more visible and creates the space before the mind automatically lands on everything. So shamatha helps us see the building process more clearly. And then vipassana helps us investigate, to analyze this confusion, this overlay, by asking what is actually here before the story, and where does me get slotted in? Can the owner of experience be found? And asks what is direct experience and what has been added. So in a way, vipassana is learning to catch the imagined nature in its act. And meditation helps us recognize the imagined nature as imagined and see the dependent nature as a process rather than reality. And we begin to glimpse the perfected nature when the overlay, the confusion, starts to loosen. So meditation doesn't create the perfected nature. It helps us stop automatically believing the imagined nature. So up to this point, Yogacara has helped us understand how confusion is built, how simple experience becomes commentary, and how commentary becomes self and other, and how those patterns get reinforced until they feel like it's real, it's reality. But if that were the whole story, would we understand samsara better without yet understanding why liberation is possible? Buddha nature enters here to say that confusion, however persuasive, is not the deepest truth. Buddha nature helps to explain why recognition is possible, why what is revealed when the overlay loosens is not something newly created, but something that's uncovered. If all we had were this architecture of confusion, we would understand why we are confused, how the overlay gets built, and why patterns repeat. But we might still wonder, why should recognition be possible at all? Why does the path touch us? And why are teachings, compassion, beauty, devotion, and openness so moving? Buddha nature is the answer of resonance and confidence. And this is also where Zanzo Kensei's warning becomes important. If we become too in love with reasoning and empiricism, we can lose the magic. So what is the magic here? So at this point, I want to tell a story. It's a story about a few years ago, a Sangha member passed away, and an article was published about her life and how she met our teacher, Sogyal Rinpoche. And it was back in the 1990s when she hadn't yet connected with a Dharma teacher, but had a strong aspiration to do so, to connect with a teacher. And she was living in the middle of the boondocks in Australia with not very much other than maybe a radio. And it was one day she was listening to the radio and there was an interview and there was someone being interviewed, and there was something in the way that the person being interviewed laughed that just caught her. And the person who was being interviewed was actually Sogyal Rinpoche. And as an outcome of hearing this radio interview, she felt compelled to go to the bookshop to find his book that had been published around then, the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying. And in the back of the book, she found that there was actually a center quite close to her. And that really was the end of the story of, well, that's the beginning of the story of how she became a Dharma student. And she passed away a few years ago. So that's part one of the story. And then I'm going to then just bear with me here. So do you all know what a tuning fork is? Yeah, sort of. Yeah. So basically, and you can look this up later on if you want to on YouTube. There's actually videos showing this. So basically, if you have two tuning forks which are of the same frequency, and you hold them apart, but you make one of them start to vibrate, the other tuning fork will also start to vibrate. It just happens. So just bear with this analogy, and then I want to bring in one of the most famous verses from the Uttara Tantra Shastra, which is one of these famous shastras on the Buddha nature. And this verse is verse 28. I'm just going to read this verse out. Since the perfect Buddhakaya radiates, since suchness is undifferentiable, and because of the disposition, all beings always possess the Buddha heart. So this verse speaks about, actually, it's part of a section that's proving why we all have Buddha nature, that it's inherent in all of us. And there is a very famous footnote that is attached to this verse in Karl Brunholzl's book, When the Clouds Part, I think it's called. Anyway, I'm going to read to you the footnote. I don't think it needs that much explanation, but it is just, I just want to share it with you. So it goes, so as far as the awakening of Buddha nature in sentient beings is concerned, one may think of both Buddhas and sentient beings as violins, with the Buddha violins being in perfect tune and playing loudly, clearly, and all the time teaching the Dharma in various ways, while the strings of the sentient being violins are covered by a very light cloth. In that situation, the strings of the latter violins will not resound when the former play, but all the strings with the same tuning will at least start to vibrate, even if they are covered by such a light cloth. The less they are covered, and the louder the strings of the Buddha violins play, the stronger they will vibrate, so that the cloth starts moving and gradually slips off the strings, resulting in the strings of the sentient being violins gradually resounding louder and clearer too. Likewise, on the path, the more the qualities of Buddha nature in beings are stimulated and thus shake off, so to speak, their adventitious obscurations, the more these qualities manifest fully. The fact that the Buddha violins can actually make the sentient being violins vibrate too states in effect that their strings are indeed the same nature. So when a friend actually told a group of us that story about how a Sangha friend first connected with Rinpoche through his laugh, I then shared the essence of this footnote. And I find it incredibly touching, and they were actually very touched by it. And I'm sure that you can all think of examples of situations where something like this has also happened for you, where you felt some resonance. And I think what this shows is that even though our nature may be obscured, something in us can still feel the Buddha violin play. Something in us resonates because Buddha nature is already there. And Buddha nature helps explain why the Dharma can touch us at all, why hearing teachings, feeling inherent qualities such as love and compassion, or tasting a moment of openness can feel so oddly familiar, as though something in us already knows. So just to return to Suchim Jamtso's quote at the beginning, this pointed to a very important danger, that after cutting through illusion, that we may become so habituated to emptiness as negation, that we subtly negate even the clear light nature of mind when it begins to reveal itself. So Yogacara is helping us in two ways. It's explaining how the overlay of confusion is built, and it reminds us that complete freedom from conceptual elaboration is not blankness, but it's something that is luminous and cognizant. And practice helps us stop believing that overlay. And Buddha nature gives us the confidence that even through obscuration, something in us can still hear the Buddha violins play. So in a nutshell, study gives us confidence in the view, and meditation makes that view experiential. So I'd like to just conclude with a very short reflection. Just become aware of any sounds that are arising. Any feelings that arise. Thoughts that arise. What is the direct experience here? And what is being added? Thank you.
So should we go to the breakout rooms? If you can join any of the rooms. So I'm going to try to assign people, but if you can join a room, that would be helpful. Is it possible for you all to join a room on your own? No? Okay. Let me just see if I can do that. Podcast rooms. Okay, let me just see if 1 second.
Hi everyone. Can you please just confirm that you can choose the room? I'm sorry, I'm not the host today, but I'm gonna try to make it work. You cannot choose the room. Okay.
Actually, in my case, my room was empty. It was just only me. And
Okay.
then I came back to the main room and I tried to choose
Okay.
another room and I have no options.
I got it.
Mine went
Um,
to the room and then came back to the main session
okay.
automatically without me choosing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Why can't we remain here and just talk? I mean, we have left like
Yeah, I think so.
No, I think we should recreate the rooms because most of the people are out of the rooms. It's like 120 three people out, so it's most of you. So I'm just gonna close the rooms right now and open it again. Okay, sorry for this technical glitch. So what I'm gonna do now is recreate all rooms, and let's say we will have like 20 breakout rooms. So right now, all the rooms would be assigned randomly because obviously I don't have time to manually assign people to the rooms. So please just choose the room that is your language room. And I will just remind people that rooms 1, 2, 3 are Chinese speaking rooms. And I think French room is number what? Marie, is it 7? 5. It's 5. And I think let's just keep it simple and have 3 Chinese and 1 French rooms. And I'll make sure that everyone can choose the room. Okay, so I will just hope that you would be, savvy enough to go and choose whatever room you can. Okay, I'm opening all the rooms again, and all the facilitators, please choose the room assigned to you in the list before. Anya, Penny, can you guys choose the room? Wait, I will allow you to.
Hi.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
sorry.
saying it's not available.
It's what?
Yeah.
It's saying it's not that I can't get through to that room. The room code's not accepted.
Oh, can you try again?
I've been trying several times. Doesn't work.
Okay, can you join any other room? 12?
12? Okay, I'll go to 12. Okay.
Yeah.
fine.
No
Okay.
one.
I made my way, I made my way to room 7, but Terry was already there, who said he had been assigned to 22. So I was looking for 22 and left him in room 7, but there is no room 22. That's why I'm
No
back here.
worries. Just
I'm fine.
just
Yeah.
join whatever small room.
Yeah,
Room
I'll just
12.
go anywhere.
Yeah, doesn't matter
Thank-
at this point. Yeah.
You
Okay.
know, so sorry, I went wrongly to the room 5 I was assigned. How do I come back to an English room? Where do I choose? I'm so sorry.
You go to the bottom panel. It has more. Then you go
Yeah.
breakout rooms and you just
Okay.
choose.
Okay. Sorry. Thank you. Thanks.
No worries.
Doesn't seem to like any of the codes on my computer. I'll come in on my phone. I'll try
Okay.
again.
Okay. Okay, so all the Chinese participants, please join room 1, 2, or 3. All right.
Okay, I think
Yeah.
I've got all the tools that I need to carry on. The breakout
Okay.
rooms was what it is.
Okay. It's fine. I think it's happening now. Just take a look on the
On the breakout
keep an eye
room.
on the time.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. So you can just manually close the breakout rooms like maybe in some time.
Cool.
Okay.
Okay, so I think we have some time now for some questions, right? So maybe whoever has a question, you can just put your virtual hand up. I know.
Hi, Lily. Thanks for teaching. I just have a simple question to ask. What's the relationship between the five skandhas and the eight consciousness? Because I asked my teacher before, but I still haven't get it very clear. So I'll ask again to you. Thank you.
So the five skandhas are usually it's just another framework basically. There are many ways to understand. The skandhas are actually, so it's the body in its entirety, form, and those four related to mind. So it's a kind of, maybe you could say, a little bit more simpler way of explaining how the mind and the body kind of, yeah, are together, and how we impose this idea of a self upon it. So it's a nice template for us to see where you can not establish that there really is a self. Whereas the eight consciousnesses is really about the mind. So there's no form here. It's talking about how we are actually perceiving things first rawly, and then we add the story and the self, and how things actually become more familiar. So it's not like you can't really compare them. They're just different frameworks. So the five skandhas come kind of usually in the Shravakayana, the root yana that you've studied, and here the eight consciousnesses are introduced by the Yogacarans.
Okay, then are the five skandhas all included in each consciousness? Because that is answer my teacher told me when I asked the question. The five skandhas are included in each consciousness.
So
Each level.
the four related to the mind in the skandhas correlate to everything within the eight consciousnesses, the way that it has been presented here within the eight consciousnesses. But there isn't a clear correlation. So you're not going to say, like, sensation, feeling, this relates to this. I wouldn't try to compare it too much. I would just, the Dharma is so rich with so many different frameworks, which if you find one that works for you, just stick with it. Like for me, I find the eight consciousnesses so clear. And the five skandhas, I think, are quite good at the beginning when you're just sort of trying to work out what mind and form is. I think this model with the eight consciousnesses is maybe, I don't want to insult anyone, but I think it's maybe a little bit more sophisticated than the five skandhas.
Okay, thank you. I think the last part is the answer I would like to get, because I got confused. Do we need to do I need to use two systems together, or do I get to pick one of them, which feels more convenient to me? So your answer just answered my question. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you. Anya.
Yeah, thank you, Lily, for the teaching earlier. I got hung up on a sentence from chapter 19, right at the beginning, on the discussion of the mind only and the misunderstanding that it is not, all reality is fabricated in our minds. And there is this sentence that Vasubandhu's point is to equate the lack of independent nature with the product of mental construction. And there were just a little bit too many negations in that sentence. So I wonder, if you have a way to explain that in your own words, what the fine, I think there is a fine differentiation that is here, but I don't quite get it. So I would be grateful if you could help me out.
So that was at the beginning of the mere cognizance chapter, right?
Exactly, middle of the first page.
Yeah. I would need to really go back over it all to draw out the point. So I can't right off the top of my head give you an answer to that. But I mean, really, what I think Andy's pointing to here is the emphasis in this chapter is that actually the main landing is we are looking at this mere cognizance, which is actually the emphasis is more on seeing that what we're experiencing is like it's just this mere knowing, and not to get caught up with is there something outside, you know, all of that philosophical discussion. Actually, in a way, we can get a little bit lost in it. The main point really here was about there is this mere cognizance, which actually we then build the confusion on top of. So that was really what I took as the juice of that particular chapter. And I think I did follow it, but it is quite convoluted. And I think Andy presents it because he wants to honor the pathway of how that unfolds. But I think if you went over it again, you probably would be able to discern what's actually happening there. Yeah.
I'll just take that as a pointer to not get hung up on this particular point. Thank you so much.
I mean, you can obviously, if you spend some time with it, it probably will make more sense. I mean, it's not easy. You have to kind of wade through it. But I think Andy really is just going through it or to give you the context, but then to basically say the main point is this mere cognizance, which is actually allowing us to see that actually we're not seeing things the way they actually are. Yeah. Thank you, Anya.
Hi, Lily.
Hi, Saras.
Hi. So I have a question, and I think you may have just answered it right now, but it was triggered from the topic of the discussion. So our question was that can the phrase direct experience, can that be experienced by the mental consciousness, which I understand to be conceptual? But right now you just said that there is a cognition, so is that the kind of direct experience experienced by a mental consciousness that you're talking about?
So with the mere cognizance, you have these 5 sense consciousnesses, these ones that are in contact with the world. Like we say, like I see this glass now, right? So with all of our sensory consciousnesses, all they do are receive information. They don't do anything. They're kind of like a dumb robot. They're just there, and they receive information. And then it's the mind consciousness that comes in and actually starts to make the story, add the I. Yeah.
So my question is that can the mental consciousness have direct experience?
No, it always receives everything from the direct experience in terms of our experience of the sensory world is coming through those 5 sensory consciousnesses first, and it's the mental consciousness that comes in after that. So it's in a way the mental consciousness is blind. It has to receive information from those sense consciousnesses.
Okay. So then whatever the mental consciousness experiences, even during meditation, that is all conceptual kind of thing. It's not direct experience that is there for the mental consciousness to land on, for the lack of a better word.
I mean, in practice, maybe this is a trickier question, because actually, in a way, if you're really in practice, what are you experiencing? If you're kind or not so, if your sense consciousnesses are sort of a little bit dulled, not so heightened, then in a way, your mental consciousness actually should be quietened down too. So if things are coming up, thoughts are popping up, I mean, that's not something that's coming from your sense consciousnesses, no.
Yeah, I was just thinking that, suddenly random thoughts pop up in your mind. You're sitting and you're like, where did that thought come from? So, I mean, would that be a kind of a direct experience? I mean, the thought coming up before I started kind of landing on the thought, just the moment the thought that comes up. I mean, I'm sure, I don't know. I mean,
it's a really good question. Where do thoughts come from when they pop up, and how random are they? I'm not sure. This is a good question. Maybe this is a good question for you to actually ponder on as well. Maybe I'm going to throw it back at you. Where do you think your thoughts are coming from? Are they kind of just popping up randomly, or is there some kind of sequence there?
Okay. Okay.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Cyrus. Louisa and Deepa, I think.
Yeah, I'm off camera, but have you seen the film Tuktum? Tuktum?
No.
It's about when a person dies, if they've been a great meditator, they say that the brain and the heart die, but their consciousness still remains. Somehow it remains for up to 3 or 30 days, depending on the level of the meditator's ability. Can you speak to that consciousness there at all that remains after a person dies in Tuktum?
Oh, this is a huge question, Louisa. I mean, you could actually spend a long time on this, and I'm not sure I feel completely qualified, but I think as a Buddhist, most of us probably do believe in rebirth, and actually, it can actually be logically proved that there is rebirth through, there has to be a continuum that's taking us from past life, present life, future life, right? So depending on which school you're looking at, there is something that is a continuum. So in a way, you know, on this level with the Yogacarans and Buddha nature, there is sort of this continuum, which is not truly existent either, but there is something moment by moment that's carrying you through. And that's connected also with this alaya consciousness, which kind of carries these karmic seeds, so that from one lifetime into the next lifetime, there is that continuity. So maybe just simply, I would leave it at that, if that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's so fascinating, isn't it? Because it's kind of a potential link for people to understand rebirth, and where it's invisible, so it's hard to track it. So
Yeah.
thank you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you so much.
Thank you for the question. Thank you. Hi,
Hello,
Deepa.
thank you for the wonderful teaching.
You're welcome.
My question is, we were discussing in the group, and the breakout room, basically we came out of the breakout room, so the question was left unanswered. So one of the group member was asking, like, when in the meditation experience, when we acknowledge and recognize and kind of the whatever thought is there, so which consciousness is this? So I was thinking, we were just discussing that it seems like it's that sixth consciousness, like where you are basically with the mindfulness, you have acknowledged, you have recognized, and you have acknowledged. So I just wanted to confirm that, so that the group member is also satisfied. And another question is about alaya consciousness. Could you please explain, is it different from in different traditions, alaya consciousness, or is it the same throughout in all the Buddhist schools?
So in terms of if you're having a thought and you recognize something, yeah, you could say that sixth consciousness there, the mental consciousness. But there probably subtly is something of the sixth and seventh and eighth there as well. I think the key here is, don't get stuck on there being solidly these 8 separate things either, right? They are a little bit malleable, and they're a little bit of a movable feast, so they kind of affect each other as well. And then in terms of this alaya consciousness, I only know it from this tradition. It's kind of borrowed quite often because it's a really good explanation for how karma and karmic seeds and imprints can carry on from lifetime to lifetime as well. And I think we would usually say it's a Yogacaran concept, but it could be existent elsewhere. Sorry, I can't add more to that.
So within this tradition, Yogacara tradition, also, it is not to be mistaken with just the habitual patterns, right? It's because that that was coming up again and again. It is not just the habitual patterns, it is much more than that, right? It's like the seed, kind of the imprints.
Yeah, so it's kind of every time basically every time you have some thought, it creates a propensity, and that gets stored in this alaya consciousness. And then if something happens another time similar, it's triggered. It's like, like if you have a propensity to be jealous, every time something like that, a situation arises, you've got the conditions, and that seed that was there in your alaya consciousness is ripened to manifest again. And the beauty of knowing this is that if you know you have a particular pattern, then if you become more aware of it and you have the space to then actually change the way you react, then you can actually create a new pattern, which is maybe a little bit less nefarious, a little bit more virtuous, that actually then becomes your new pattern. So that's why actually knowing about this framework, I think, is quite useful, because you can change the way you react to things.
Yes. So I think all my group members have got the answers. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thank you. Yeah, there's a question here. Yeah, so Sangeeta, no, the Prasangika school definitely don't prescribe to the 8 consciousnesses. That's definitely a Yogacara explanation. Yeah. Louisa, you have another question?
I don't want to be greedy. If maybe Gazella should go first. Okay.
Does Rena know? Rena, you want to ask your question?
Hi, Lily.
Hi.
Yeah, so my question is that what is the difference between sixth consciousness and eighth consciousness? So I have heard in mind there are, of course, imprints, and in alaya also. So I just want to know the difference between both six and eight.
So 6 is the kind of mental consciousness, which, for instance, if we see something, the eye consciousness is only seeing the form. It makes out what this is, but it doesn't label it as anything. So the 6th consciousness is the labeling consciousness. So it works out what it is. And I know this is a glass. I think we all know this is a glass. So this is what's happening in the 6th consciousness. But then it also starts to create the stories about, I don't like this glass, it's not very elegant, or, actually, all the stories kind of start with the 6th. And the 8th consciousness, which is the alaya consciousness, is actually where all these propensities, all these habits, the way we think, start to kind of, well, they're stored. And then basically when the conditions arise for some similar situation to happen again, we will respond in a similar way to how we responded in the past. So that it explains why we respond. We all have maybe prevalent patterns or habits that maybe you're aware. If you get angry very easily, it's because you have maybe had the habit of being angry in the past. So that's where the 8th consciousness comes in. It's basically it's our history, but it's not just this lifetime. It's all those karmic patterns, those tendencies have accumulated lifetime after lifetime. We're kind of, sometimes things might be happening because of the karma has ripened in this lifetime from a previous lifetime. It's not maybe anything to do with what you did yesterday, right? So that's where the 8th consciousness is actually, it's very useful to know why we act the way we act, because actually nothing is sort of wasted, it's actually stored actually. So then it kind of changes the way maybe ethically, or even how we would want to act, how we might want to be.
Yeah. So Lily, my second question is that I had heard from people, when we take rebirth, our mind travels with imprints. So do they talk about alaya or this?
No, it's not. I mean, the alaya is just basically where these karmic seeds are kind of stored. In the bardos, when there's no body, there's no form, but there is something there where, in a way, these karmic seeds are kind of being taken. So they're not a form. This is the interesting thing, and there's a lot to explain what it actually is. But you can imagine there is an awareness which is coming with its package, its unique package of all the karmic imprints from previous lives that's coming, that's going to the next rebirth, basically. Yeah, but it's not that eighth consciousness that you, if that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Lily. If I may just jump in and ask a question. Thank you. I wanted to ask just in terms of clarification of the sixth and the seventh. So, the sort of judgmental inner gossip, that sort of can go on like, I'm not good enough, I shouldn't have done that, I shouldn't get angry, all of those sort of, inner chatter, if you like. Would you call that, because it is the judgment that is, one is engaging with. So would that be the sixth consciousness or the seventh, which is the me as well? Because this is all about the sort of inner dialogue that's going on.
I would say it's probably a bit of both. Because the stories are kind of created in the sixth, but then they're kind of solidified more by the seventh's kind of fixation on it being about me. So and this is like I said earlier on, it's really good not to think that it's either one or the other. Quite often it's all of them happening at the same time.
Right.
Yeah.
So like a stacking up, you would say, like in...
Yeah, I mean, in a way, it's quite interesting, because what mere cognizance shows us is if we didn't allow, if our eight consciousnesses were not so active, we would just see things as they are without creating anything. So when you see something, we already like, I'll give you an example. So basically, if you see something that you don't recognize, your mind is already desperately trying to work out what that thing is, because it cannot bear to experience something it doesn't understand. So you try to work out what it is. And that's why, in a way, you see a snake where there's a rope, because in the context of maybe if you're going for a walk in a forest, it's more likely that it would be a snake than a rope. So you mistake a rope for a snake, right? So it's like your mind is already working to try to work out what something is the moment you see it. It's like that moment from seeing something exactly as it is without any commentary. It doesn't have a chance to kind of just be that. Your mental consciousness and our seventh and eighth consciousnesses are coming in to work out what's happening. And that's the point of why we're meditating, to try to slow this process down so that you can actually have that space to just experience something without actually adding more onto it.
And that mere cognizance would be at the level of the five consciousnesses.
Yeah, I mean, it's like Andy says in the chapter, it's sort of, it stays, it's not you have to leave it at the end as well, because it's still sort of conceptual. But yes, it's at that level of with those, when we experience something, and then we add on with everything from the five consciousnesses, from the eight. So the five are fine, but it's everything else, the 6, 7, 8, that kind of can make things a little bit more. They're what's creating the story of me and object out there.
So then direct perception, when we speak of it, would be at the level of the five consciousnesses.
Yeah.
Got that. Okay. Thank you so much, Lily.
Thank you very much. Hey, Barbara.
Hi, Lily. Thank you for this. I want to go back to your example of a glass, and you said we all see this as a glass. That may not be the case culturally. In other cultures, it may be seen as something totally different. Is a sixth consciousness where we have the collective as a collective knowledge, and we would automatically name it as a glass. I'm not sure if I'm explaining it.
No, you are.
It's
Fine.
not
I
just
understand.
me and my naming experience. There's a collective kind of naming process that resides in the collective, in the sixth consciousness. Am I understanding that correctly?
I understand what you're saying. So that no, so when I said, when I hold this up and you probably all recognize this as a glass, that's probably because you probably all have experienced a glass. If you've never experienced what this is, if you don't know what this is, if I hold this up and you think, oh, I don't know what that is, then you're just seeing something that's slightly translucent in my hand. You won't say, because basically there's a way that our mind processes everything we experience, and it basically will lock down and eliminate everything that it doesn't think it is until it finds the thing that actually, oh, I know this because in my past I've actually seen something that resembles this, and it's a glass. So it only works for you to say it's a glass if you've seen something and experienced something as a glass before. So a child doesn't see things with all of these labels. You know, like a child, when they come in, they're just experiencing things very nakedly, and there are no labels. The labels come in later. You know, it's sort of part of our conditioning, and it's important because we need to communicate. But the problem is then is when we start to think that this really is a glass, you know, that that's all it is, you know, that's the problem. So the whole thing with the Yogacara is it's trying to break down a little bit of this rigidity and solidity that we put on things. So yes, I say that this is a glass, you all know that this is a glass, but actually it's way more than that, you know. Yeah.
But that collective experience, where is it stored? Is that in the eighth consciousness?
But it's not a collective experience, it's your experience. It's
So I
your
mean,
experience. Yeah, it's your experience.
you and I experience this as a glass and at another time. Where does that memory get stored?
So
That's
that
what I'm asking.
memory, so the memory of this being a glass is stored in your Alaya consciousness, the eighth
In
consciousness.
the
Yeah.
eighth consciousness.
And it's personal to, yeah. Each of us has this consciousness, right? These eight consciousnesses, in a way. We're saying it's within these skandhas of the body and the mind, and there is this consciousness, this mind that experiences that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Maybe that would. Have we got anything else in the questions in the chat?
We do have one. If we eliminate the mistaken understanding, which of the eight consciousness should we start working with? What does the process of spiritual cultivation unfold? And with that, after this question, we will have the closing.
It's a really good question, Rachel. So here I would say if we want to eliminate this mistaken understanding, then shamatha is actually helping us to see, to slow down, or actually create a little bit of space between things happening. So we experience something through our five sense consciousnesses, and then our sixth consciousness kicks in with the labeling and the stories. And if you can start to see that happening, and then in the background you start to see the I going, oh, this is good, I want that, I don't want that, and you see the way you're habitually sort of reacting, that's really the domain of this. The shamatha meditation is helping you to create the space to see when something's sort of like playing out as a story in your mind. And then Vipassana meditation, the analytical aspect, is actually asking the questions about, you know, what is it? All of those kind of questions which you need to sit with are working to kind of break down a little bit of this. But the whole point of meditation is, in a way, you're slowing yourself down to have these insights. So it's something that will take time. It's actually a process which takes a lot of time. I'm sure there's people here who have been meditators for as long as I've been alive, and you know, they're still working at it, and I'm still working at it. We're all still working at it, because yeah, it's we're just chipping away, kind of removing these layers bit by bit. So I think it's not like you're specifically working with one, or it's really all of them together. But shamatha kind of is more about seeing what's happening, and Vipassana is actually exploring, analyzing what's actually coming up and asking the questions to sort of challenge the way that we usually think about what's actually happening in our minds. Okay.
So, I just want to, before we do the closing chant, just want to thank Lilly very much. Thank you, Lilly. That was such a, for me personally, I have to say, such good, very personal practice instruction. So I really appreciate that. And I know I'm not the only one, because in our breakout group as well, it was very, very personal and very, very practical. So I really appreciate you're taking a profound philosophical tradition and turning it into something so useful that we can really use. So thank you very much, Lilly. That was quite wonderful. So maybe you could lead us in the closing dedication of merit.
Pleasure. Thank you. By this merit, may all attain omniscience. May it defeat the enemy wrongdoing. From the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, from the ocean of samsara, may all beings be free. As long as space remains, as long as the world remains, may I too remain to alleviate the sufferings of the world.
Okay, so now it's open for anybody who would like to say anything.
Thank you,
Thank
Lilly.
you.
Thank you, Lilly.
Wonderful
Thank
teaching.
you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
So much.
Beautiful teaching, Lily. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Lily.
you so much.
Thank
Beautiful.
you.
Thank you, Lily.
Buen día.
Thank you.
So that's it. Should we close?
Yeah, close. Just
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
bye.